Hello, I'm Ila Shrevinsky, and this is Break the Fake. They make them, we break them, and tell you everything you need to know. The eternal enigma of Serbian President Aleksandar Vucic, forever balancing between East and West like a circus acrobat who doesn't want to fall too hard on either side. Now, in his latest act, Vucic has teased the world with a grand revelation. At least two world leaders have been secretly negotiating with Putin. But who? Oh, who could that be?
As with international public law, I didn't see Putin for 3 years, and many of them were speaking to him secretly. And I know at least two big leaders that were speaking secretly to him. Because, of course, I still have my friends in Kremlin and in some other countries as well. And I didn't do it for a single time. I'll see him on 9th of May after 3.5 years.
Wow.
Which means that we are very sincere, very honest, and very loyal to what we say.
For a brief moment, the mystery had the potential to be interesting. Could it be a Western leader caught whispering sweet nothings into the Kremlin's ear? Perhaps a surprise defector from the anti-Putin coalition? But no, of course not. When pressed, Vucic simply smirked and waved away the obvious candidates, Hungary's Viktor Orban and Slovakia's Robert Fico, both of whom already made their Moscow pilgrimages last year. So who are these shadowy figures? Vucic simply won't say. He prefers to dangle the information like a master of suspense, or perhaps just someone who enjoys watching people guess. Maybe it's the leader of a country so irrelevant to global politics that even Putin forgot he met them. Or maybe it's just Vucic himself, playing messenger boy between Moscow and various opportunistic politicians who prefer to keep their pro-Kremlin flirtations off the record. Either way, this revelation is perfectly in line with Vucic's usual game, keeping Serbia just close enough to Russia to appease his nationalist base, while winking at the European Union to keep the funds flowing. And as for these supposed secret peace talks, if they're anything like previous Russian diplomatic efforts, they likely involve the usual Kremlin wish list: unconditional surrender, rewriting history, and of course, a healthy dose of gaslighting. Alright, let's talk about Hypocrisy. Not Hypocrisy, the Swedish death metal band, who are awesome, but Hypocrisy as an actual phenomenon. Remember Russia's sovereign funds, right? Frozen like Han Solo in The Empire Strikes Back, held mostly in the European Union, with some of it also in the US and other places. The same funds that Russia always gets really angry about, proposing some rather weird ideas to solve the issue, such as this one.
Perhaps it is appropriate to remind Mr. Trump that in 1867, Russia sold Alaska for only $7.2 million. Well, today, that amount is equivalent to $16.2 billion. You know, we have $320 billion frozen in our assets. Well, let them keep $16.2 billion, but give us back Alaska.
Anyway, remember the bright idea of giving this money to Ukraine to help it survive? You know, justice, fairness, and all that? Well, that didn't happen, and according to the Polish news website wp.pl, there is a reason for it, namely greed. Greed is good, like in 1980s Wall Street. Whip out your Wolf of Wall Street whip, grab the wheel of a white Lambo, and ride off into a future of parties and champagne. This apparently is what happened in Belgium. Probably minus the white Lambo, probably no Leo DiCaprio or his drip either, but still, lots and lots of cash. According to author Tatiana Kolesnichenko, for the Belgian clearinghouse Euroclear, the Ukraine war was a jackpot moment. Suddenly, they had billions in Russian assets at their disposal. And because money never sleeps, they started to invest it. And for the Belgian government, the proceeds and the taxes meant, yeah, more money. So, where's the hypocrisy? Well, first, when the cash got blocked on Euroclear's accounts, the Belgian administration suddenly started getting very easily triggered whenever anyone so much as mentioned the word confiscation or seizure. In March this year, Belgian Prime Minister Bart de Wever said seizing the Kremlin's blood money would be an act of war. Plus, of course, financial markets would get spooked and all that. However, according to anonymous officials interviewed by the author of the article, all this was literally the Himalayas of hypocrisy, or dog water for all of you Gen Z types. Also, Belgium often said they helped Ukraine financially. Thing is, unlike, say, Poland or the Baltic states, they didn't actually spend a penny out of their pocket. For example, based on the article that we've mentioned, in 2022 and 2023, these guys sent Ukraine over 500 million euros. Cool, huh? Except the money they made from the taxes on the Russian funds alone apparently amounted to almost 1.3 billion euros, meaning that they helped Ukraine for free and still made about 780 million in profits. Tell me this is not hypocritical, I dare you. Later on, the G7 came up with a compromise whereby the proceeds from the funds would be used to pay back a 50 billion euro loan to Ukraine. Belgium did not object, but ensured that it would keep the profits made before that moment. Sweet. Also, the author of the story says Belgian officials, by blocking any talk of EU seizing the Russian money outright, were acting in a way that was actually worse than even Hungary, because at least the Hungarians were being brutally honest. And now, with said Hungary and Slovakia trying to undermine EU procedures to keep sanctions in place, there is a growing risk that the funds might slip out of Europe's grasp and go back to Russia. We Europeans often love to poke fun at Donald Trump, and on the question of Ukraine, this beef we have is often justified. But before we start another session of Trump bashing, how about a quick glance in the mirror? You know, just to make sure that the image that stares back at us isn't the Wolf of Wall Street with a Belgian accent. Ah yes, another masterpiece from the Kremlin's Ministry of Fever Dreams. According to Russian state TV, wounded Ukrainian soldiers are secretly being shipped off to Canada so that their organs can be harvested under the devious cover of medical treatment in France. Because obviously, nothing screams covert international organ trafficking like an official neatly folded donor consent form, conveniently written in French, tucked right into the pocket of a captured soldier.
Да, это получается французский медицинский полис. Получается, перед тем, как нас отправить, он, командир вот это выдал, получается, каждому по такому. Обещали там, что если что, при ранениях попадете в самые лучшие французские клиники. Не успел, потому что начался обстрел.
One might assume that in a war zone, a document like that would be at least slightly crumpled. But no, this was as pristine as Russian election results. Almost as if it was planted? No, surely not. Russian propaganda would never, ever fabricate evidence. This latest absurdity follows a long tradition of Moscow's grotesque storytelling, where Ukrainians are simultaneously weak, doomed cannon fodder, and the centerpiece of a massive international black market for body parts. The only thing missing from this plot is a Bond villain stroking a cat while selling kidneys to NATO. Of course, the irony here is that actual reports of organ trafficking tends to surface in places where the rule of law is optional, like Russia's own Wagner-linked operations in Africa, for example. But hey, let's not allow reality to get in the way of a good old-fashioned horror story designed to dehumanize Ukrainians and keep the Russian public foaming at the mouth. At this rate, expect the next bombshell from Russian TV to be about how Kiev is using genetically modified super soldiers who run on NATO-branded baby blood. Because when your entire worldview is built on paranoia and projection, no conspiracy is too ridiculous to air. And with this, we conclude this edition of Break the Fake. Please stay with us here on TVP World for more latest news and updates.